Leaves from a Russian Diary. Pitirim Sorokin. Part 3. 1919 to 1920. Chapter 20. Red Scholarship.
The remuneration of the foreign press,
said a prominent member of the Soviet government in 1920.
requires a considerable sum of our money.
This was evident from the number of foreign correspondents, foreign writers and other celebrities who visited Russia at this time, and the character of the information they spread abroad. The English Labour delegation, H. G. Wells and Bertrand Russell, like other foreigners, saw principally what the communists wanted to show them. They came in touch with few non-communists, nor would they have been able to speak with many such had they so desired. They simply swallowed whatever bait the Soviet leaders offered them and went home impressed with the dictatorship of the proletariat, endless communist enthusiasm, and the devotion of the people to the Soviet government. I did not meet Bertrand Russell, but friends of mine did meet him and made what efforts they could to enlighten him as to the true condition of affairs. I was present at the meeting in the Palace of Labor, from which most real laborers were excluded, and I saw something of H. G. Wells who, from his arrival, was placed under the constant guardianship of Gorky. Wells visited the Academy of Science, but he could not talk with J. Pavlov or other distinguished academicians. Gorky did not take him through the university, but showed him only its one decently equipped building, the physical laboratory. A dinner was given Wells in the House of Arts, with clean tablecloths, clean dishes, and better food than any of the intellectuals had seen in years. There was even meat on that table. But to give it a proletarian appearance, the spoons were of wood. To create a truly liberal atmosphere, a number of university professors and literary men were invited, although most of the guests were communists, and 2 Chekists were on hand to watch the counter-revolutionaries. Indignant at the betrayal of truth by these men, I decided to make a speech, although I could not then use the English language. Addressing Wells, but really speaking to the communists, I explained the real situation and the appalling campaign of murder which was being carried on in the name of liberty. I spoke moderately, for one does with the hangman in the room, but I must have spoken to the point, for Gorky suddenly interrupted, saying that such speeches were inadmissible. "Then why are we here?" I asked. "Are we invited only to assist in deceiving this great English writer?" At this several celebrated Russian writers, to show their indignation, rose and left the room, crying,
We refuse to be classed with liars.
Amphitheatrov, an eminent novelist, remained, saying to me,
I am going to try to finish your speech.
He did manage to speak briefly, but Gorky made him take his seat, declaring that what he was saying was improper. Gorky's own speech was a sweeping defense of the communist government, and made him very popular with them. But it cost him the respect of the intellectuals, many of whom after that evening would never take his hand. As for me, even before the dinner to Wells was over, I left the hall and once more, for my health's sake, disappeared. In 1920, when all these famous foreigners were reporting so enthusiastically on the new democracy, the mortality of scientists and scholars increased so frightfully that the Soviet government began to fear that in a few years all Russian scientists would be dead. A special, scientific ration was therefore established, giving each family of scientists a monthly allowance as follows: 40 pounds of bad bread, 2 or 3 pounds of sugar, 5 pounds of salted fish or meat, 5 pounds of groats, 1 pound of salt, 2 to 4 pounds of butter, half a pound of coffee, a poor substitute for the real thing, half a pound of tobacco, and 5 boxes of matches. We were also permitted to organize a house of scholars, where we might hold meetings and conferences. For these concessions we were grateful neither to the government, which had done so much to increase the sufferings and death of the university people, nor to Gorky, who all along had played the role of a cunning broker, displaying a generosity which cost him nothing. We were grateful to the foreign scholars and scientists who sent us additions to our poor fare. Every half pound of sugar or bit of soap we thus received was a treasure, and once when we received in one parcel, from some Czechoslovak professors, 10 pounds of sugar, we felt like millionaires. The increased ration of course gave us great joy, and once or twice a week when we visited the House of Scholars to receive it, we gladly stood hours in the queues. Beggars of all the world, we called ourselves, watching world-famous scholars like Pavlov and Markov waiting in line with rucksacks or baskets, Karpinski, president of the Academy of Science, falling asleep from happiness when he received his first basket, others, almost as well known, asking each other like paupers.
What are they giving this week?
The House of Scholars became a pleasant retreat also when foreign journals and magazines began to be sent us, H.G. Wells being among the donors. Unfortunately, no new works on social science or economics, psychology or history, philosophy and law, were included in these. We had the Outlook for 1919, some copies of the Edinburgh Review for 1917-18, 2 old copies of the Economic Review and one of the Historical Review, nothing more. In 1922 I received a few sociological works from Czechoslovak scholars and from Professor E. C. Hayes, and these were most eagerly read by all of us. As our economic situation became ameliorated, our status in other respects became lowered. At the beginning of 1921 a decree was published, signed by the Commissary Rothstein, that
Liberty of thought and scientific research is a bourgeois prejudice, that all professors, teachers, and writers should teach and write in full accordance with Marxian and communistic theories, and that those who would not do so would be dismissed.
To this we replied with a declaration saying that liberty of thought was a condition without which no science could exist or develop, that science recognized no dictatorship except the dictatorship of truth, and that no real scientist or professor would or should obey a decree so absolutely dogmatic and anti-scientific. Some university professors were instantly dismissed, while others, forbidden to teach, were removed to the research institute, where they would not be harmful to students. The autonomy of the university was utterly destroyed, the elected deans being replaced by communists, the dismissed professors by red professors, and a special commissary, a freshman, Zweiback, was set over the rector and academician Shimkovich. A sailor of the Baltic Fleet, one Serebryakov, was made dean of the Faculty of Law and Social Sciences. It is enough to say of the red professors that at one of the faculty meetings the students appeared with the following petition.
As many new professors have been appointed whose scientific works and university activities are unknown to us, we beg the faculty to require the new deans and new professors to publish a list of their scientific works and a short curriculum vitae to show their university career.
The red deans and professors got out of this delicate situation by arresting some of the students' representatives, and declaring that they held all bourgeois sciences in contempt. The students prepared a new petition in which they declared the lectures of the new professors revealed ignorance of their subjects inadmissible even in freshmen. They gave us stenographic reports of these lectures to prove their charges, and they begged us to organize special courses in which they could be trained. Of course, we could neither dismiss the new professors nor organize special courses, and the rector told the students to take their complaints to the government, that is, if they were anxious to be arrested. The new commissary of the university, the Jew Zweiback, took away from the rector, Shimkovich, the most prominent zoologist in Russia, all his seals and declared that he was now the university head. For the contemptuous manner in which he treated professors and students alike, this man was caught one night by students and severely beaten. But that did not drive him from office. In 1921-22 the rector was dismissed and most of the professors dismissed, banished, or executed. This policy of the government was a clear trial of the moral and social spirit of Russian scholars, and I can testify that most of them withstood every trial and temptation to which they were subjected. A very few of those in the lower ranks of the scientists, Svyatlovsky, Griedskull, Engel, and Durjevin, for example, preferred the benefits of the government to sacrifice for truth. One of the greatest, J. P. Pavlov, showed to what heights moral and scientific ideals soared in Russia in those terrible days. For no other reason than foreign propaganda, the Soviet government in 1921 issued a decree giving Pavlov special consideration, providing for publication of all his works, and giving him a committee consisting of Gorky, Lunacharsky, and Christie, to care for him and for his laboratory. The answer of Pavlov to this decree was this declaration.
I am not a broker, and I do not sell my knowledge for your rations. The dogs in my laboratory may eat better food if you give it to them, but I will not accept any privileges or benefits from hands that are destroying Russian science and culture.
Another distinguished intellectual, the writer M., refused even to accept the scientific ration, and though he was in an advanced stage of tuberculosis, he declined to go to a Soviet sanitarium.
I prefer to die rather than accept anything from the murderers of my country,
he said. Such acts of heroism, such devotion to ideals, in the face of all temptations, have been everyday occurrences in Russia during the Soviet rule. Between these moral heroes and those men who have shown themselves cowards, there have been intermediate types, among them 3 or 4 scientists who, while hating communism, adopted a policy of captatia benevolentia, flattery and servility to the ruling powers. The great majority of intellectuals have simply endured and, when endurance failed, died. Let anyone looking for moral heroism turn his eyes to the thousands of people in Russia who, for years, from day to day, from night to night, in spite of persecution and temptation have steadfastly replied to the Bolsheviki, "Man does not live by bread alone, and thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve."